Good evening and welcome to Tucker Carlson. Tonight, it's Monday. We just had a vacation, so we're trying to think a little more broadly about what's happening in this world. Here's what we've come up with. If you had to boil down the Democratic Party's long-term goals to the most important goals, the first would be this, and it's obvious. The federal government ought to cover the essentials of life for most people. Health care, college, housing, food, in some cases a guaranteed basic income. That's the program the Democrats espouse. Another word for it might be socialism. The party's other long-term goal is the elimination of meaningful restrictions on immigration into this country. Get rid of ICE, accept most refugees, give citizenship to tens of millions of people here illegally. In other words, open borders. So those are the Democrats' main priorities, a massive social welfare state and millions of new citizens from the third world. Nobody is hiding that. We're not making it up. They're saying it out loud. The problem is that those two goals conflict with each other. You can either admit the world's poor into your country, or you can give your own people more free stuff, but you can't do both. The math doesn't work. Socialism with open borders is impossible. It has never worked, and it never will work. Anyone who thinks about that for about a minute understands it. So the idea is fatally flawed. The question is, how do you sell a program that can never actually work? Well, you lie about it. You pretend that what's obviously true isn't true at all, and you're evil for thinking otherwise. And of course, that's exactly what they're doing now. Watch DNC spokesman Jim Acosta from earlier this month scold the president for daring to suggest that migrants from the imaginary caravan, should it actually exist, might try to hop the U.S. border.
But your campaign had an ad showing migrants climbing over walls and so on.
That's true.
But
they weren't actors.
They're not going to be doing that.
They weren't actors. Well, no, it's true. Do you think they were actors? They weren't actors. They didn't come from Hollywood.
All right.
They're not going to be doing that, says Democratic flack Jim Acosta. Turns out that's precisely what they're going to be doing, and just did over the weekend. American authorities had to shut down the border crossing at San Ysidro, California, right next to San Diego, after about 1,000 people tried to rush the crossing. Watch. So that's what the DNC channels told us was never going to happen, and of course it did happen, and it was bad. Mexican riot police and U.S. border agents both came under attack from the mob, which threw rocks at them. With no meaningful wall along the borders, authorities used tear gas to disperse the crowd. Now, there's fairly recent precedent for doing that. In 2013, a group of about 100 people tried to rush the very same border crossing at San Ysidro. American authorities forced them back with pepper spray. Barack Obama was president at the time, and the incident passed with little notice. Just 5 years later, there's a new president and an entirely different standard. The left erupted at these pictures of the tear gas and accused the administration of moral atrocities. Hawaii Senator Brian Schatz got so worked up, he suggested that American authorities had committed a war crime by using illegal chemical weapons. Keep in mind, these same so-called chemical weapons are used against unruly American citizens all the time, and nobody cares. But those weren't American citizens you just saw getting tear gassed over the weekend. They were migrants. They were holy men on a sacred pilgrimage north. What happened to them was inexcusable. Cue the moral outrage.
Here we look at children being subjected to tear gas. That's the United States causing that. That's outrageous.
We have seen the images of the children and the women, and there has got to be a pragmatic and compassionate answer here that does not involve tear gassing children. That is not who America is.
That's not what America is, declares some random blowhard on CNN who has somehow been deputized to lecture you about what America is. On the left, America is always one thing for sure, in every case, wrong. Watch as this MSNBC guest suggests that federal Border Patrol agents must have been lying about being attacked with rocks.
There's also questions whether or not anyone actually threw rocks yesterday. NPR was reporting that actually it was relatively peaceful.
Yep, relatively peaceful, except for this scene, which somehow didn't make it into many news reports. So, well, yes, it turns out they were, in fact, throwing rocks, but according to a lot of the analysis you may have seen today, it was in a peaceful way. gentle rock throwing, really more tossing than throwing, playful, actually. Now, here's a different perspective. This is from someone who was actually there in San Ysidro, and in contrast to the people you just saw, is not a professional propagandist.
I kind of challenged that this was a peaceful protest, or that the majority of these people were claiming asylum. We ended up making about 42 arrests. Only 8 of those were females, and there were only a few children involved. The vast majority of the people we're dealing with are adult males. One of the groups that I watched, one of the groups that actually several of them were arrested, they passed 10 or 15 marked Border Patrol units walking east to west, or west to east, I'm sorry. Numerous uniformed personnel as they were chanting, waving a Honduran flag and throwing rocks at the agents. If they were truly asylum seekers, they would have just walked up with their hands up and surrendered, and that did not take place. What I find unconscionable is that people would intentionally take children into this situation. What we saw over and over yesterday was that the group, the caravan as we call them, would push women and children towards the front and then begin basically rocking our agents.
So there you have it. We'll let you reach your own conclusions about who is telling the truth about what's happening right now on our southern border. Check the video before you make up your mind. But as you ponder it, step back and ask yourself some more fundamental questions. Is there a natural limit to this kind of immigration? How many resources does America really have to share with the rest of the world? Are we as rich as we assume we are? Are you? How many poor people can we realistically accept before we're not that rich at all, but increasingly resemble the countries from which these people are fleeing? And by the way, if accepting more poor people really makes you more prosperous, then what exactly has happened in California over the past 30 years, which despite record levels of immigration is poorer than ever? Now, it's possible there are good answers to these questions, logical answers. On the other hand, if there are answers, why is the left trying to prevent you from asking the questions? David Tafuri is a lawyer and former Obama campaign advisor who joins us today. David, thanks a lot for coming on. So before we get to the broader questions about where the country's going and what we can absorb, a few questions about what happened over the weekend. I've watched all day as Americans have defended foreign citizens who attacked American border agents and suggested that somehow the Americans are in the wrong when foreigners waving foreign flags throw rocks at them. How does that work?
Well, you showed some compelling footage, and I think both sides of this debate need to take a deep breath and think about their positions. So I agree with you, remember, that we have the right to control our border and decide who gets in. On the other side, we also have to use rule of law when we process people who do have the right to apply for political asylum under the laws of our country and have the right to do that and while being in a peaceful place and not under the economic and serious security situation that they face in Honduras. And now there's a compromise. Let me tell you what the proper compromise is.
But hold on. Let's just address the facts of this case just for a second. If they were applying for asylum, then why did they rush the border crossing? Is that what asylum application looks like?
Well, not all of them are probably going to meet the standard for asylum, clearly.
But would you say that someone who waves the flag of a foreign country as he rushes your border station is eligible for asylum?
Well, I don't understand why they would be holding their flag when they're running from that country. So that's a good point. But
what if they rush but what if they try and bum rush the border agents? Doesn't that immediately disqualify them?
Well, we both agree that they have no right to bum rush our border, and we have the right to use force, not lethal force, but a non-lethal force to prevent them from coming across. And for those who threw rocks, it was right for our Border Patrol agents to arrest them and even to use tear gas if that's what they needed to do to stop them from coming across.
Then why is everyone,
but at the same
I agree
time,
with you. Hold on, why is everyone lying about this? Why is the DNC and all the people who work for them, Acosta and all the buffoons you see on television, why are they demanding that we not believe our eyes, that there's no caravan they're telling us, they would never hop the border, you're a racist if you think they're attacking us? Why are they lying to us, do you think?
Well, it's not for me to explain what they're saying. What I want to do is to talk about what is a sensible solution to this, which is the compromise that was reached in October between the U.S., Mexico, and UNHCR, which is the UN Refugee Agency, which is these people stay in Mexico. They are given housing, they can stay there, and they are allowed to apply for political asylum in the U.S. while in Mexico. And during that time, they will will be processed legally, and their rights will be adjudicated via our process. And if they don't meet the standard, they can't come in. And many of them, in the meantime, will likely find jobs in Mexico or go home. And that's already happened.
Look, but what I find so striking, and look, I just want to be really clear, as I have been many times, I have total sympathy for someone who wants to come here. I'm glad to be a citizen, okay? And I understand why they want to be. But what about our interests? Like, how many people can we absorb? Because no one's even pretending this is going to make us a better or richer country. Like, that's a lie, and everyone knows it. It's going to make us poorer, obviously accepting a lot of poor people when automation is making our own jobs go away. So how many people can we accept before this country really changes for the world? Seriously, it's a serious question.
Well, I mean, why is nobody asking that question? We have different views of where America is. You paint America to be this feeble state that can barely deal with a couple thousand people who want to be processed.
We have 22 million
I think we are still the wealthiest, strongest country in the world.
But is it good
and we
for
also
us?
we also have accepted many immigrants. Everyone here, unless you're Native American, you are an immigrant.
No, but you're giving
doesn't matter how far you go back.
So you're appealing to
let me answer.
No, a real answer. Like, what's the number? So we've got 320 million people. I've got a bunch of kids. I plan to die in this country, and I kind of want to know what it's going to look like, and I want a voice in that. So what can I expect? How many more people do we let in before it's enough?
Well, we're letting in far fewer this year and last year than we did before.
But what's a good number? What should I look forward to?
And we have an immigration problem, which is we have too many people here who are here unlawfully. We need to deal with that problem. But we can't completely cut off immigration. We have to have sensible immigration. We have to protect our border, but not close our border.
I know what the bumper stickers are. I just want to know, I want someone to tell me 50 years from now, here's what America will look like.
Well,
but no one wants to have that conversation because it's... You know why.
That debate, it's nice to have that debate here, but that debate needs to take place in Congress.
I don't hear
Congress
it anywhere.
has to pass an immigration law that makes these decisions. It sets numbers and it decides
let's have a real conversation.
How many people we're going to let in and from what countries.
Because no one else is doing it. I want it on this show. It's the only show that actually has that conversation, and no one will engage with me.
I'm engaging with you.
Thank you, David. Great to see you.
Thank you.
Brandon Judd is president of the National Border Patrol Council, and he joins us today. Brandon, thanks a lot for coming on. Do you think I'm really struck by the waving the foreign flag and throwing the rocks. So we're told, and I think it's true in some cases, people want to come and they want to be part of America and they're good people, and I absolutely believe that. But if someone's waving a foreign flag on our border and throwing rocks, isn't that person instantly disqualified from consideration?
You would hope so, and that's why people are calling this an invasion. How is it not an invasion when you have thousands of people that are bum rushing our border, waving another country's flag, and throwing rocks at our law enforcement agents? That's absolutely ridiculous to consider that we're even talking about this right now.
So the question is, how much would you have to hate your own country to make excuses for that kind of behavior?
You know, and let's be honest, how much do they really hate their country if they are waving their own American flag?
I mean,
yes, you're talking about the liberal. Yes, you're talking about the liberal.
By the way, if I could blame one group, it's not the migrants looking for higher wages.
No, it's the liberal media that's inviting
the people
them.
making excuses for inexcusable behavior.
The apologists. Absolutely. Look, when you're constantly going on the news and you're constantly vilifying the good people and you're glamorizing the bad people who are committing atrocious acts, more people are going to do that, and that's one of the magnets that are drawing people here, and that's why we face such a problem on the border. This debate's going to continue to rage until the Democrats finally say, we want border security. Border security is what the vast majority of the American public wants. We want it too. Let's get it done.
I always think about the guys who are tasked with carrying out our laws that Congress passes, by the way. The buffoons yelling about this are the ones who could change it if they wanted. What must it be like to be a Border Patrol agent, ICE agent, and to turn on the TV and watch some chin-tugger call you a Nazi?
It's horrible. It's demoralizing. It makes you second guess where this country is going when, again, I love this country, which is one of the reasons why I am a Border Patrol agent. It's one of the reasons why I put on a uniform and go out and patrol the border. It's to keep this country safe. And to have people calling me a Nazi for enforcing the laws that Democrats passed. Remember, this policy by which we deployed this tear gas, that's an Obama policy. That policy was written under the Obama administration and implemented under the Obama administration, yet you don't hear people talking about that. They just want to embarrass President Trump.
Well, how can that be true? Because I saw today where the senator from Hawaii, Brian Schatz, compared it to a war crime.
That's rhetoric. That's politics. Again, we continually get politicized in this country. Our law enforcement is constantly being politicized. Tucker, you'll be the first person to say if a law enforcement agent or officer does something wrong, that person should be held accountable. The problem is we're holding our law enforcement officers and agents accountable for not doing anything wrong just because you don't like them or you don't like the mission that they perform. All of a sudden they become
Well, you
bad
see
guys.
these demagogues standing up and saying, if you dare carry out the law that I passed, you're in violation of God's law or something. It's like total insanity.
Exactly, and that's why it becomes so difficult to recruit law enforcement.
Well, of course,
officers
that's right. And it's the same with cops. I mean, who would honestly want, we need cops, we need Border Patrol agents, who would want to be one?
Yeah,
why? People are not thinking through the implications.
No, they're not.
Brandon, thanks very much.
Thank you, Tucker.
Great to see you. Even Hillary Clinton appears to have begun to realize that open borders are not sustainable, certainly in a democracy. Others on the left may be realizing it too, and one of the smartest of that group joins us next. But George Papadopoulos going to jail today. His wife joins us to explain how sending her husband to jail makes America a lot safer. We'll be right back. Hillary Clinton typically says very predictable things, but recently she said something unexpected and interesting. In an interview with The Guardian, Hillary Clinton warned that mass immigration into Europe may need to slow down because it is driving a rise in political extremism and volatility. And she's onto something. When governments adamantly refuse to listen to the public may start looking for alternatives. Now, many on the left are attacking Hillary Clinton for her flash of insight. One person who is not is Angela Nagle. She just wrote maybe the most interesting piece in the last 6 months. It's called The Left Case Against Open Borders, and she joins us tonight. Angela Nagle, thank you for coming on. I'll say I have no idea what the rest of your politics are, but I thought this was such a smart and brave piece. I can't imagine what kind of reaction you got to it. But tell me if I'm mischaracterizing it. You're making the case that open borders may harm low-wage workers in the country whose borders are open. Is that a fair statement of what you're saying?
Yes, I mean, I think it's kind of a disaster for working people on both sides. Countries that have a lot of problems with, emigration, with brain drain, simply can't keep their professional class. And then the countries that migrants tend to move to, I mean, there's low-wage migrants, and it's not their fault. We shouldn't blame the migrants, but we really need to start putting pressure on businesses and employers. The conversation has all been around ICE and the border, but the truth is, if you don't put a lot of pressure on the employers, the migration situation is going to continue to be in a state of crisis.
Well, I agree with that. And one of the most bewildering things in the last couple of years is watching, not people on the actual left, I think you're on the actual left, but the sort of American liberal left, taking the side of Tyson's Chicken or some other big employer, in effect. When did that happen? When did that change take place?
I'm not exactly sure when it happened, but like a lot of these things, there is this kind of bubble around the media class who change a position on something overnight, and then the rest of the world wakes up and finds that this moral taboo has been erected kind of overnight. But as I said in the piece, billionaire-funded free market think tanks have been churning out open borders ideology for years now, and it's a shame that that people who should be offering an alternative that places the lot of workers at its center, but also the relationship between the kind of like almost imperial relationship between the big world-dominating economies and others. I mean, right now we're seeing this really tragic situation on the border, and the thing is, I defend in the piece America's right to have borders and to have a sovereign nation.
Right.
But, Trump was supposed to be the America First guy, and the truth is that, a lot of time with American foreign policy, America is not respecting the sovereignty of other nations, whether it's through military interventions in the Middle East or economic interventions in Latin America. And we're seeing the consequences of that now. But it's just a very shallow debate where we just...
I agree. I can't believe I'm agreeing with you, but I am. And I respect your braveness. I'm sure you took a lot of heat for this, but I hope that it starts a much-needed conversation
I hope so
on
too.
the left. Thank you, Angela Nagle. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Author and columnist Mark Steyn joins us. So, Mark, there you heard someone on the actual American left make the point that I think we've been talking about for a couple of years now, that the people who are telling you they're on the side of civil rights are actually on the side of some creepy global corporation that wants to reduce your rights. Why has nobody said this until, like, her?
Well, I think it's because the so-called globalists actually have prioritized their own virtue signaling over the interests of the masses. I find it interesting, as one Irishman to an Irish lady, that Angela Nagle spent most of her life in Ireland, which has always had open borders with England. And she quotes in the piece Karl Marx pointing out that when large numbers of Irishmen went to England, it suited the bosses because it depressed wages, and it also created two groups of the working class, so that the English working class resented the Irish working class, and the Irish working class resented the English working class. It was in the boss's interest, and that's now actually the situation that the Democrats are inflicting on America. I saw Geraldo today, and he was going on about how the president needs to be more compassionate. We need more compassion with immigration. Compassion, compassion, compassion. Again, to quote Angela Nagle's piece, I don't see what the hell is so compassionate about there being more Somali doctors in Chicago than there are in the whole of Somalia, which is a nation of 80 million people. What's compassionate about denuding developing countries of their best and brightest, so that if you want to see a doctor in Somalia, you're screwed because all the Somali doctors are in Chicago?
Why does nobody make that point? How are we helping if 1/3 of the population of El Salvador lives here? Why are we surprised when El Salvador is a mess?
No, I think that's, but I think again it's to do with the elitist worldview. If you look at left progressive elites 60 years ago, their domestic staff were mostly black. And that makes the progressives feel a little uncomfortable now. Makes the Barbara Streisand class feel a little uncomfortable. So they actually now prefer to have Hispanic, Latin American, whatever immigrants as their domestic class. But basically, this kind of mass immigration depresses workers' wages in developing countries and operates as a brain drain. In developed countries, it depresses wages, and in the developing world, it's a massive brain drain. It works in nobody's advantage except for the big corporations and virtue signaling leftist elites.
God, that's so nicely put. You are one of the crispest summarizers I've ever met. Mark Steyn, thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Tucker.
George Papadopoulos went to jail today. You could unlock the back door and let the kids play outside. Whew. We're now safer. We'll talk to his wife about how much safer now that he's in jail. Stay tuned. Former Trump campaign advisor George Papadopoulos reported to jail today. He's serving a 14-day sentence. Supposedly, that sentence is necessary so that Robert Mueller can protect the rest of us and American democracy itself from the mortal threat of Russian operatives hiding in the bushes. Is there a single person in the United States of America who believes that? And if they don't believe that, if they know it's a lie, because obviously it is, what is the point of putting George Papadopoulos behind bars, or any of these people? Many are being financially ruined, their lives destroyed by the Mueller investigation. Is it achieving anything? Is it part of a partisan vendetta? What is the point? Simona Papadopoulos is George Papadopoulos' wife. She's been a tireless advocate on his behalf. She joins us tonight. First, of course, our sympathies to you that your husband is now behind bars. I just want to make sure we're absolutely clear on this. Is there evidence that he worked for the Russian government to subvert our democracy?
Hi, Tucker. Thanks for inviting me. Tonight I feel a lot of emotions. Mostly I feel defeated and scared. Scared not only for the 14 days of jail time, but mostly because something I like is completely groundless and based on inexistent contacts with Russian officials. I always stress, and I've been very vocal about the possibility for George to draw his plea agreement. He walked today and to the jail with a lot of courage and resilience. But at the same time, I feel this decision very unfair. I'm not talking about the decision of the judge, but all the incriminating process fabricated by Mueller. This is clearly a fabrication. We know today many evidences came out recently about his zero level of involvement in the Russia collusion scheme. So I don't understand, honestly, how misremembering the date of the meeting with the Maltese professor and not as some channels said his Russian contacts could lead today to this jail in Wisconsin, where I walked him in a very stressful way. I feel honestly defeated. This is the democracy as a whole is undermined. I think this should never happen to any citizen, and any American, any human being involved and destroyed, assassinated in this way, because today there is this stigma on the George's reputation as for being a traitor. He never betrayed anyone. He simply didn't deliver the information that Mueller was probably trying to extort from him. I'm sorry if I'm very straight talking about this point, but this is my strong belief. It looks to me an awkward situation that created, that put it on hold his life and also my life. I married George during this, you know, and I profoundly believed in him, and I'm a personal witness of the case. I know Joseph Mifsud is no Russian agent. I know this man since 5 years, and I can't understand how the meeting with this Maltese professor could lead to the crossfire hurricane first and then to George incarceration today.
Well, he volunteered to help the Trump campaign. That may have been his real crime. We should care if an innocent man goes to jail, even for 2 weeks, and nobody cares, and we should care.
Exactly.
Simona, thank you very much.
Completely.
I know that you care. Of course, it's your husband. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Victor Davis Hanson is a senior fellow at the Hoover Institution. He joins us tonight. So without getting, Dr. Hanson, thank you very much for coming on tonight. There are so many details and threads in this story, but I keep wanting to come back to the core allegation, which is that American citizens colluded with the foreign government to rig the election. Is there any evidence of that? And if there isn't, then why are so many people seeing their lives destroyed?
Well, there isn't in the terms of the Russian collusion mythology. I mean, 18 months ago and $25 or $30 million ago, if you had said we came up with Carter Page as a possible suspect, he hasn't been indicted, or Mr. Papadopoulos, or now we're going after Jerome Corsi and Roger Stone because they might have been playing fast and loose with the truth. That's like saying P.J. Barnum exaggerated. If that's what this whole thing was about, it's become, I could call it a circus, but it's a tragic circus. And what you get the impression, Tucker, is that what you cannot get in quality indictments, you're trying to justify with a quantity of indictments. Right. They're indicting everybody. And remember that this thing didn't start off well, Tucker. What starts off badly ends up worse. This whole idea of the special counsel came because James Comey had leaked confidential, maybe classified documents. That prompted his friend, Rod Rosenstein, who was very much involved in a FISA warrant that was not truly candid, to surveil Carter Page. And then their mutual friend, Robert Mueller, was selected, and then he also almost immediately picked a number of partisans. And remember, the media gushed and called them the Dream Team, the All-Stars, the Army. Two of them had given funds to had defended Hillary Clinton associated clients, and we know what Mr. Strzok and Miss Page did. And out of that nexus, we were told that they were going to find people who had tampered with the election. And the final irony is that of all of these misdemeanors that he's trying all over the world to collate, there were felonies right under his nose. because Christopher Steele was a foreign national, and he could be indicted very easily, and he could be extradited. Unlike the Russians, we know that a presidential candidate hired through a firewall, GPS, Christopher Steele to find dirt on her opponent, and he did so, and he used Russian sources, which were also foreign nationals. And then they used the auspices of the federal government, the CIA, the FBI, and the State Department, to seed those unproven allegations into an election-era climate. And they also, as we know, used that dossier to mislead a FISA judge without telling them about its genesis. And out of all that, we don't get anything. I think, in conclusion, President Trump should just declassify these documents that have been requested by the congressional committees, stop the redaction, and then give a speech and say, I want to restore the sanctity of the special counsel. I want to get a nonpartisan attorney, and I want to give him about 90 days to find out whether there was one thing, collusion. And if he can't, no problem. But if he can, we'll see where it goes. And I think Christopher Steele has a lot of legal exposure.
And certainly start by declassifying this stuff so the rest of us can make a judgment, which I think we deserve at this point. Professor, thank you very much.
I think it would be wise to do so, and that would be the ethical thing to do as well.
I agree with that completely. Thanks. Well, a few months ago, we talked to a radio show host who told us that Twitter, presciently, would eventually silence him. It has happened. Why has Twitter silenced him? Our investigation into that is next. Well, just a few months ago, big tech tested its powers by blacklisting Alex Jones from every major tech platform all at once. No one really said anything about it because Alex Jones, ew, we're not allowed to like him. We're supposed to think it's okay that he's deplatformed. So, of course, the tech oligarchs were emboldened. And if they can silence one person, why not silence more? And, of course, now they are. Jesse Kelly is a two-time congressional candidate. He hosts a radio show in Houston. Just a few months ago, he came on this show and predicted that Twitter eventually would censor him. You wrote this piece that I thought was really compelling about Alex Jones, and you said, look, I don't agree with Alex Jones's views, but that's not the point. The point, as you articulated, was if you can silence this guy because you don't like what he says, why can't they silence you or me?
That is the point, Tucker, and they're coming for you and me next.
Well, Kelly turned out to be right. Just this past Sunday, yesterday, Twitter shut down his account, and they did not explain why. Tonight, we're trying to find out what happened. Jesse Kelly joins us live. Jesse, thanks a lot for coming on. You knew this was coming. You presciently predicted it. Why did Twitter take you off its platform?
Nobody knows. Twitter kicked me off the platform because I was a mainstream voice on the right that spoke the truth, Tucker, and that's all anybody knows. They've given me no explanation, as they told Congress they would give explanations. All they sent was an email that said you are permanently banned and you can't appeal it for repeated rules violations, only I don't violate their rules. I don't cuss at people on there. I don't harass people on there. I don't do any of those ugly things that some people do. So Twitter's going to become what they are. All of a sudden my account vanished like a Hillary Clinton email.
Did you call them? I mean, it's not, let me just say, if you're in your business or my business, that's not a small thing. I mean, that's the way, one of the ways that you communicate with your listeners, one of the ways you disseminate your ideas, a main way you do. So did you call Twitter to find out, or have any contact with them at all?
No number to call. In fact, once they banish your account, it wasn't a suspension. They completely banished me, so I'm not even able to log in and email Twitter's support. A friend of mine sent me a couple email addresses for people that supposedly work at Twitter, but I'm sure they're not going to answer any of those. They did exactly what I said they would do. They came for Alex Jones first because he's a nut job and they wanted to see how the right would react. They got him, and I knew they were coming for me. They'll come for you too.
So when they did come for Alex Jones, the idea was, well, you know, you can have him because he's embarrassing, and no one really said anything about it, in my opinion, in a very cowardly and stupid way. Do you think if conservatives, or not even conservatives, people who dissent from the conventional view of everything that we're now required to believe at gunpoint, if the rest of us start to complain, do you think we can push back against censorship?
I think we can, and I think that's where the real power is. See, it's not a big deal that I got kicked off Twitter. It hurts Twitter worse than it hurt me because they finally kicked off somebody that woke everybody on the right up. people are now starting to realize what Twitter has become. Twitter's nothing but a platform. It's a blank piece of paper that somehow one day woke up and decided that they were the artist, that they were in control of what gets put on that piece of paper, and that's not where their power lies. So if they continue along this path, it's going to be nothing but two feminists screaming at each other because one of them accidentally found a boyfriend.
Am I misunderstanding this, or do the social media platforms have a congressional exemption that allows them not to be held legally responsible for things that are said on their platform? In other words, they're not media companies, and they can't be sued as media companies can be sued. But now they're acting like media companies. How does that work?
How it works is they have the best of both worlds. You have it exactly right. They are treated like media platforms, meaning they are just an open site where people can post what they want as long as they're not inciting violence. Only they're acting like Think Progress. They're acting like the New York Times because these radical voices on the left never get censored. Even Farrakhan, that complete scumbag that has a tweet still up comparing Jews to termites, he still has an account. But I post things about Velveeta and mine gets banished.
Jesse, thank you for that. I appreciate it.
Appreciate you, Tucker.
A federal judge has thrown out the government's ban on a barbaric practice imported here from other countries. What exactly is going on? That's after the break. Well, just a few months ago, big tech tested its powers by blacklisting Alex Jones from every major tech platform all at once. No one really said anything about it because Alex Jones, ew, we're not allowed to like him. We're supposed to think it's okay that he's deplatformed. So, of course, the tech oligarchs were emboldened. And if they can silence one person, why not silence more? And, of course, now they are. Jesse Kelly is a two-time congressional candidate. He hosts a radio show in Houston. Just a few months ago, he came on this show and predicted that Twitter eventually would censor him. You wrote this piece that I thought was really compelling about Alex Jones, and you said, look, I don't agree with Alex Jones's views, but that's not the point. The point, as you articulated, was if you can silence this guy because you don't like what he says, why can't they silence you or me?
That is the point, Tucker, and they're coming for you and me next.
Well, Kelly turned out to be right. Just this past Sunday, yesterday, Twitter shut down his account, and they did not explain why. Tonight, we're trying to find out what happened. Jesse Kelly joins us live. Jesse, thanks a lot for coming on. You knew this was coming. You presciently predicted it. Why did Twitter take you off its platform?
Nobody knows. Twitter kicked me off the platform because I was a mainstream voice on the right that spoke the truth, Tucker, and that's all anybody knows. They've given me no explanation, as they told Congress they would give explanations. All they sent was an email that said you are permanently banned and you can't appeal it for repeated rules violations, only I don't violate their rules. I don't cuss at people on there. I don't harass people on there. I don't do any of those ugly things that some people do. So Twitter's going to become what they are. All of a sudden my account vanished like a Hillary Clinton email.
Did you call them? I mean, it's not, let me just say, if you're in your business or my business, that's not a small thing. I mean, that's the way, one of the ways that you communicate with your listeners, one of the ways you disseminate your ideas, a main way you do. So did you call Twitter to find out, or have any contact with them at all?
No number to call. In fact, once they banish your account, it wasn't a suspension. They completely banished me, so I'm not even able to log in and email Twitter's support. A friend of mine sent me a couple email addresses for people that supposedly work at Twitter, but I'm sure they're not going to answer any of those. They did exactly what I said they would do. They came for Alex Jones first because he's a nut job and they wanted to see how the right would react. They got him, and I knew they were coming for me. They'll come for you too.
So when they did come for Alex Jones, the idea was, well, you know, you can have him because he's embarrassing, and no one really said anything about it, in my opinion, in a very cowardly and stupid way. Do you think if conservatives, or not even conservatives, people who dissent from the conventional view of everything that we're now required to believe at gunpoint, if the rest of us start to complain, do you think we can push back against censorship?
I think we can, and I think that's where the real power is. See, it's not a big deal that I got kicked off Twitter. It hurts Twitter worse than it hurt me because they finally kicked off somebody that woke everybody on the right up. People are now starting to realize what Twitter has become. Twitter's nothing but a platform. It's a blank piece of paper that somehow one day woke up and decided that they were the artists, that they were in control of what gets put on that piece of paper, and that's not where their power lies. So if they continue along this path, it's going to be nothing but two feminists screaming at each other because one of them accidentally found a boyfriend.
Am I misunderstanding this, or do the social media platforms have a congressional exemption that allows them not to be held legally responsible for things that are said on their platform? In other words, they're not media companies, and they can't be sued as media companies can be sued. But now they're acting like media companies. How does that work?
How it works is they have the best of both worlds. You have it exactly right. They are treated like media platforms, meaning they are just an open site where people can post what they want as long as they're not inciting violence. Only they're acting like Think Progress. They're acting like the New York Times because these radical voices on the left never get censored. Even Farrakhan, that complete scumbag that has a tweet still up comparing Jews to termites, he still has an account. But I post things about Velveeta and mine gets banished.
Jesse, thank you for that. I appreciate it.
Appreciate you, Tucker.
A federal judge has thrown out the government's ban on a barbaric practice imported here from other countries. What exactly is going on? That's after the break.